Here.
Mr. Davis.
Here.
Mr. Diloretta.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Ms. Kirkendall.
Here.
All members of council are here and accounted for. The purpose of this meeting is to bring forth legislation that will be considered by city council at a future date. With that, we'll start off with Mr. Metcalf.
Your Honor, two things, no legislation, but two items to discuss. First of all, I'd like to make a motion that after this meeting, we have to go into executive session for the law director and Mr. Dan Ballmer for union contracts dealing with the fire department, and we're going to meet at the public leasing room.
Second.
It's been regularly moved in second on public forum. We will move into the executive session for the discussion of an update on union negotiations. Roll call.
Mr. Metcalf.
Aye.
Mr. Paul.
Aye.
Mr. Villamagna.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Diloretta.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Ms. Kirkendall. Aye.
So moved, motion carried. Mr. Metcalf.
Yes, Your Honor. I want to get going forward in a policy of council, because we're going to have a lot of people that are going to be retiring. We're going to have, we have another recommendation for a resolution this evening for one of our firefighters who retired. We recognize a couple of police officers recently. I know we're going to have a lot, we have to know our reports. We have not done resolutions for retired employees since 1998, and if we're going to do it, that's fine. I just need to make sure that if we're going to do this, let's have this as a council, say, yeah, we want to do this, and let our department heads know to kind of notify our council clerk who's going to be retiring, and then we can recognize everybody in the city that's going to retire. So I'd like to just open up, I hate to digress from this meeting, but I'd like to see the thoughts of council as to if this is something we want to entertain going forward. So open up for comments.
I think we should entertain it. The individuals worked for the city and worked hard for all these years. The least we could do is give them a resolution.
I say stay the past. Do what it hasn't passed. I think just too many of them.
That's a hard thing to say because in the past, up to 1998, we did do it. Since 1998 until now, we have not, until recently. So that's, you're on the fence. Where are you at?
No.
Okay. Angie.
I haven't even given it any more thought. I'm fine with it.
Yes, absolutely. I think anybody that works for any place for the amount of time deserves a resolution. I mean, it's a 2-second deal. It's a standard form. I mean, it's kind of even a little embarrassing to be sitting here talking about it. I mean, we just should do it, and that's it.
I think we need to set up criteria, certain parameters. I mean, if the guy got 10 years and he's leaving, I mean, as opposed to a guy that has 25, something like that. I mean, no one gets gold watches anymore when they retire, so, you know, that's out the door, and you're lucky to get a 401k, you know, so, yeah, maybe we should set up some kind of parameter, some kind of limitations.
I agree, say policy and procedure. Set the policy and follow the procedure.
Well, and I think what we did, the gentleman that Mr. Villamagna recommended and we passed resolutions for gave many, many years of dedication and service in the police department. Mr. Paul will be recognizing somebody this evening who gave many, many years of dedication to the fire department. And I think that's probably the first thing we need to look at is number of years. So council, let's think about, we are going to go forward and recognize members of our city who have retired. You know, so our department heads, Tim, if you could maybe bring that up at your next meeting with your department heads, and then council will get together and email and come up with, or let our council clerk know some parameters. Yes.
Well, one thing, my suggestion is that if you get a disability out of here, if you get a disability, you're retired. You got a retirement pension. So if you got a couple of years on the job and you get disabled, maybe you get crushed, God forbid, Packer or policeman get shot or whatever, fireman gets burnt, and he has to retire. Disability is one thing, and then 20-year pension is, if you're eligible to get PERS, 20 years, 25 years, maybe that could be a criteria like a 20, or any pension, Ohio, police and fire, whatever, but just, if you quit, you quit. I mean, you work here 10 years and you move on to other pastures, then you quit, you didn't retire. There's a difference between quitting the business and retiring.
With that being said, though, Patty Rita retired, and we did nothing for Patty Rita, so, I mean, is it, you know, we have to set up something. If we're gonna do it, it's good for department head, it's good for, the rank and file, I mean, but we need to set something up if we're going to continue to do this process. And I mean, Mrs. Rita did a lot for this, for our health department, so she retired, got a pension, we didn't give her a resolution of accommodation, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you know, we're doing this, so that's where we need to set it up, okay? If we're gonna do this, let's set it up that, you know, that's where I want to do it. I don't want to omit anybody, I don't want to slight anybody. That's all I'm saying, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, not the problem. I just want to make sure we're going forward, Mayor. If you have anything you want to add, you can. I just want to get some formal policy in place for this council and future councils.
Yes, thank you, Councilman Metcalf. I did receive an email that a possible resolution was going to come in this evening. And throughout my years and experience here at the city of Steubenville back in 1989, we did stop the resolutions honoring our employees. At that point in time, if you can recall, Councilman Diaretta, I wasn't for it, but the policy was set by city council. Throughout the years, since we have not been recognized as our city employees, and after Mr. Bill Magna brought in the resolutions honoring 3 of our police officers, I have received quite a few of our former city employees that wanted and questioned me why they weren't considered. I would like City Council, as they're developing this policy, to take into consideration of retirees since 1989. I did request from the Finance Office a list of retirees from the city of Steubenville. Now, I might add that with short notice, this list is compelled of that may have, as you pointed out, 10 years and moved on to a better job or something. So we wouldn't want to recognize all of these, but I like to circulate these to the members of council so you can see the area of how many that we may have to honor, and we might do it all at one time through one motion or something and send these proclamations. But if we're going to do it and we're going to establish that policy, I think the people such as it was mentioned, Patty Reed, our health commissioner, and several other good employees deserve the recognition also, and I would like for them to be considered. Just food for thought, so I thought I would pass out the many names of our employees. I think if we just look at the street, Mr. Fuller put in, I believe, about 30 years, Mr. DeSantis, all the need, I mean, so we would want to consider and be consistent.
Let's not forget Robert Villa-Madden.
You're on that list.
And I speak from a former employee. I was offended then. I wouldn't be offended now not to get it. I mean, at some point you have to move forward and say you're going to do it. I mean, what happened in the past, what I did in the past, we try to forget. Whatever you did in the past, we try to forget and we move forward. Do we want to do that? I don't know if that's slighting everybody or not, but I mean, I think that we should move forward from this day and correct what was done. It should have never been stopped. I think I think it should have never been stopped. I'll change that. That's just my opinion. You move forward. We're always saying that we got to move forward. Move forward and be done with it.
Councilman Metcalf, would council or committee want some parameters to be suggested?
Sure.
Past where I've been, you did 15 years, you recognize them. And that was more of an employee recognition. You recognize employees while they were still here.
They're your employees, brought in. They weren't shorts, obviously, because you just got here a year ago. But
But we'd be
Just so
happy
that
to,
your employees.
happy to look at that and provide some food for thought. It'd be a way to go forward. No problem.
We'll get this worked out, go forward. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Metcalf. Will that conclude?
Yes, thank you.
We will now move on to Mr. Paul.
Yes, Your Honor, I have one item, and it is pertaining to what we're talking about right now. It'd be a resolution of commendation for Mr. Vince Kinnicky, our fire captain, who has served 30-plus years. I'd like to bring that in next week, that resolution, sir.
Second.
That doesn't need a second. Thank you, all.
Well, thank you anyhow, young.
We'll move on to Mr. Bill Magna.
Nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Bill Magna. Mr. Davis.
Have nothing this evening, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Diaretta.
No report, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Diaretta. Mr. Johnson.
No reports.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Curdaw.
No new legislation, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Curdaw. That will conclude the sunshining of legislation. We will now move to public forum. Is there anyone wishing to speak to City Council on city business? Please come forward, state their name and address.
Joe Summerall, 112 Starktown Road, Steubenville, Ohio. I think the last meeting or the one before I brought up about the cable, and I was told by Mr. Rappella that I should go to the state and to the what it called, because we no longer have that committee that we used to have years ago. So I called my state senator, Lou Gentile, and I called my representative, Bill Johnson, and they've been getting a lot of complaints. Because this cable, my last cable bill, I only got basic cable, went up $20. It went up 11 last year. Now, the city gets so much money per person, am I right, Mr. Bowman, from the cable company? What do we get?
We got a franchise.
250 franchise.
Right. Have you got a raise lately from them that they gave us more money since they've been raising it? I mean, if they've been raising it, they raised mine $30-some in the last 2 years. If you're getting so much per capita, how many people belong, I think you ought to get a little raise for the city, get some money back from them.
Well, but, remember last time when I said that, if we would, first of all, we can't raise our rate, but when we did raise our percentage in years past, they passed it on to you guys. Because we did that, because we did that on a negotiation one year in the 80s, late the 80s, and then it showed up on the bill. So then we stopped doing that. And I believe our mayor, I think you're the only one that's been around since then. Our percentage was a very low percentage as it was compared to other
It still is.
communities.
We have not received
Yeah.
increases financially that benefited the city.
Yeah, because I went out to my cable company and they used to like work with you, but they took it out of their hands. There's an 800 number you got to call. And I think $11 last year and $20 this year, I think that's quite substantial for basic cable. And I know there's no other kind of cable company in the city, right?
That's right.
So they got, but I did call Mr. Gentile, and he told me they've been getting a lot of complaints. And I called Bill Johnson's aide, I didn't talk to him, because he was tied up with something, but they said they didn't get a lot of complaints. But the reason I brought it to council a couple weeks ago, because Channel 9 said something about an antitrust, or they were investigating the cable companies. So that's why I brought it up. I just wondered if there was somehow we could get, I understand, I don't want to raise my cable again because you guys got more, but I'd rather see my city get it than them. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to City Council on city business? Please come forward, state their name and address.
Rick Yanch, 1301 Oregon Avenue, Steubenville, Ohio. I'd like to thank the Herald Star and wanted, maybe everyone has seen this article, maybe they haven't. But our police force and our city have done well. But here's a gentleman that's been in the court systems for the last 12 years and stole 19 guns. Now, fortunately, he was caught. But picking up where Mr. Metcalf said a while ago about prostitution with these young girls, this young man may have been able to have been helped years ago. But somewhere within our city, county, state systems or whatever, for someone to end up stealing 19 guns. And if he hadn't been caught, just think what it could have been happening eventually down the road. So there was a comment here earlier tonight, I think it might have been you, Mr. Bolton. There has to be everybody in this city, everybody's got an investment like you mentioned, landlords, realtors, banks.
And for 4 years.
Yeah.
No response.
And I've been around 10 or 11 years, and to see this is kind of, it's an eye-opener. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention, because this could have turned into really a catastrophe if these 19 guns and the gentleman hadn't been caught and the guns hadn't been recovered. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to city council on city business? Please come forward, state their name and address.
My name is Mark Nelson with 272 County Road 26 here in Steubenville. A couple of issues to bring before council tonight. The first one, I appreciate having to read, but I speak better if I read. I appreciate the effort of the city fathers, this body has been doing to address the issues needing attention in our community. One of them that I think is still an open issue is that of the delinquent and uncollectible water accounts. Early last week, while rereading the news online on WTOV, I found an article linking to the state auditor's website where I found and downloaded a disturbing document that I don't believe the public was made aware of. And I'm also not sure if the council was been made aware of it. I've not heard it discussed, put it that way. Contained in this 200-page document is the organizational chart of Steubenville, which pushed me to address council this evening. As you know, you can see the citizens are to hold all parties accountable at the top of that organizational chart. In this audit report by Ray and Associates of the city's finances, the city's policies, lack of policies, and failure to follow their own statutes is finally acknowledged. Why it took 10 years of audits to find this, I do not know. All of this brings up many concerns, most of which that we are 1 year now since the meeting at EGCC, and we still have not heard from council how they're handling delinquent accounts or the uncollectible past due accounts. And this problem's been going on during the tenure of many in this room. The existing water policy, as the document specifies, is codified ordinances 92105 and 92112, holding landowners responsible, should be followed since that is the law that currently stands. We have a water utility here that is owned by the citizens and managed by a municipality. The existing unfollowed statute specifies landowners, not landlords. What one chooses to do with their property, including lease or rent, should not be the concern of citizens owning the utility. That business owner should have their own water policies in place to deal with delinquent customers, i.e. tenants. This completely shields the citizen owner of the utility from theft or loss. It should also eliminate almost all of the need for hiring a collection agency, and through the lien process, guarantee almost a 100% collection process, though it may take time. The auditor's report and our own past finance director acknowledged, as the last page in that document, that we still do not have a clear policy in place. It's been 1 year since the meeting in EDC and 5 months since the city's response to Ray and Associates. When will the two findings in the audit letter be addressed so that our rates will not increase again?
I'd have you take a quick stab at a couple things. The audit report, of course, is from 2013. And there's been a number of steps taken throughout 2014 that the city can respond to. Obviously, hiring a water and sewer billing manager was a huge step forward. And other things. The city's performance audit, which I think you referred to the performance of the utility system, is wrapping up. Those findings should be communicated shortly, and I would just say that, again, that the audit is extremely important, but there have been steps taken since 2013 that try to address those issues. I don't know if anybody else. Council would like to respond.
Yes, and part of the answer your question on collections, is this council made it a point that when we had this independent audit from the state come in, that once that got completed, and that's in its final phase, 99% done, to where we could start acting on it, that we would act upon the issues. And part of that was also the ability to convey messages to, or thoughts and ideas from this audit to the Independent Water Review Board. So that way everything is aligned in a more proper manner for what we want to do in collecting the monies. So we're getting there. These answers should be able to come out.
But the Water
in a
Review
month.
Board doesn't have anything to do with delinquent accounts.
Correct. But I'm talking about policies and procedures that would be recommended from the state independent audit, that we would not only look at them from our manner and accept and have our manager, say these are the things that we should follow, we should enact. These are the things the council wants to have enacted, but we want to include them as well too on there. So everybody's on the same page.
That's coming soon.
It should be within 30 days, I would think. Yeah, and we said,
I would anticipate we would kind of schedule for sharing those findings and communicating those to the public. Probably, we might talk about at the finance committee meeting and establish what date we would have. So that, we focus on that issue, and certainly share that with the public. I think with the performance audit, that statement was made very early on. Those findings would be shared with the public. Absolutely going to be done.
Good. Thank you.
okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I believe Mr. Johnson, you wanted to, oh, I thought you actually, I'm sorry. Thank you. Is there
I
anyone?
have one more thing.
Oh,
Absolutely. The second thing would be, please indulge me for a second to tell you a story. The pictures I'm passing around, if you could pass them around.
Who do you want to give these?
Just behind you.
Oh,
Are pictures of Mr. Paul Coakley. Paul went to school here at Franciscan 15 years ago. He's from California. He graduated from Franciscan with a business degree. I met Paul because of he married an employee of mine, Ann, about 5 years ago. And they went off, he was a truck driver, and he went off back to running trucks for a couple of years, and he got involved in a Christian camp in Wisconsin, ran the camp until this year, actually. They had 4 children, 3 children, 1 child on the way. And he moved back to the family farm in Lewisburg, Tennessee, in order to basically drive the truck again. He couldn't afford to be a missionary anymore. On December 19th, Paul was diagnosed with cancer. It was testicular cancer. They went in immediately to do surgery. On January 20th, he died. My wife and I, Gretchen and I, went down with a couple of our little kids down to the funeral this weekend. And after a very moving funeral, we became part of a 300-vehicle procession that traveled from Columbia, Tennessee to Lewisburg, Tennessee to Berry Fall. Of these 300 vehicles that were in this procession, 90% of the vehicles had either alumni or student or Franciscan University on the back of them. The state troopers blocked entrances, exits, didn't know what to do with the traffic. It was 10 miles between the 2 towns. All of these bumper stickers, they didn't say Franciscan University of Pittsburgh or Franciscan University of Dayton. They said Franciscan University of Steubenville. And proudly, they're Franciscan University of Steubenville. The outpouring of support that was there as a witness to their small town community began at Franciscan. My point is that Franciscan University would not be in Steubenville if there was no Steubenville, and that's where all of you guys come in, all of us citizens come in. Just the fact that as boring as these meetings are, or as simple as plowing the snow is, or listening to concerned citizens like me, is tiresome, but you are making a difference much larger than you could ever know. Any bad news about our community hits CNN, but you'll never see this story anywhere of the outpouring of support of Christian love and charity that this family put together in order to support a widow and orphans now. Again, you're part of making a difference around the world, and I'm very proud to call Steubenville my home. Thank you.
thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to City Council on city business? Please come forward, state your name and address.
Hi, William Isaac, 289 Boston Avenue, second floor. here for two reasons. First reason, still working on that local liquor option petition election. And I just want to bring up one issue on that. Who's that going to benefit? Just the residents on Pleasant Heights and Lakeville and Precinct 1? That's going to benefit the whole city in every department. If we just reduce crime by getting rid of a problem liquor permit premises, or reduce police response just one time a year, that's going to pay for itself, whatever this project is going to cost. But we'll have many years of benefits from this. But it's going to affect and benefit the whole entire city with police response, with just all concerns and worrying, because these women have been here quite many weeks with a lot of valid concerns. I think the efforts and the anxiety will be reduced from that. So I'm still working on this. We've got 309 registered voters in that precinct, and I'm looking ahead in the future to put some mailings out just to those registered voters. It'll be a local effort to get them to the polls. But timing is everything, so I've got a great amount of response from people in the community that want to help out, financial donations, and people want to do some printing costs to get the word out. I think it's going to be a success. Be a part of it. Maybe a little down the road, I'll come to some of you guys and ask for some help. Maybe you're good with creative financing. Maybe you need a little bit of cash here or there, or some services from maybe like a quick print service. Maybe you can help out with that. But just wait for me to ask that. There was a guy in here last week talking about the response of the ambulance service in Steubenville to his premises on a family call. And I thought, well, that's going to be a suggestive type complaint. But something happened at the library that I was at last night that I witnessed that I didn't have any family ties to it. The woman had collapsed to the ground, and calmly the library staff called for the ambulance service to respond. The comments given to the ambulance service dispatcher, that was who was on the other line, she was calm. She said the woman had collapsed and she's on the ground. She may be diabetic. That was all that was given. That was all that was given. It took 9 minutes for the ambulance service to show up to respond to the scene. Now, if they were on another call, it should be looked into. You guys got to protect the safety and health and welfare of the community. You guys need to look into it. Please. 9 minutes. It takes me 9 minutes from Pleasant Heights to Chapel Library, and that's stopping at all the stop signs and going the speed limit. 9 minutes? And the lady said it took them 10 minutes to get there. When I saw the call came in, I looked at my computer, I recognized the time, and I watched it. So it needs to be looked into for the safety and welfare of the community. Do what you guys know how to do. We can B and C and complain about things, but these are really valid issues that need to be looked at. And this is twice in 2 weeks. How many other times is this going on? Now, if we have departments in the city that have first responders, why weren't they contacted? So that's going to be an issue to look into. So where's the lack of communication? We need to provide a lot of services, better services for the community citizens. We're an old community, and we're getting older. Look into it and see what failed. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to City Council on city business? Please come forward, state your name and address.
Kurt Whitman, 3903 Maplewood Way, Steubenville. Kind of wanting clarification. I believe that the city charter ordinance says to be on the Civil Service Commission, you cannot be an employee of the city of Steubenville or doing business with it as the first sentence in that duty. And going into negotiations for executive session, and I believe that the person you want to speak with is on civil service. How can that person be on civil service and also performing this other duty?
Mr. Burkett. We've had one or two instances where we've had a civil service hearing. The last one was with the fire in regards to the layoffs, and Mr. Deannaval recused himself and was not on the commission, and then they went and had they made their decision, so he recused himself in that instance.
Okay, but that city charter ordinances where that is an option. It says they cannot. Back when the previous city manager was here, yourself and she referred to him as the labor attorney for the city of Steubenville, as per the Herald Star. And it seems like that is an employee of the city. So therefore, is that a violation of him, of that person being qualified to be on the Civil Service Commission? Doesn't say anything about reclusing himself for 1 or 2 instances.
I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to city council on city business? Please come forward, state their name and address.
Teresa DiCarlo Antonio, 407 Lawson. I wanted to ask a question for the chief regarding dispatching information that comes over the air. We had an incident just this week, early this week, where we saw some suspicious activity, and our block watch group initiated, interest and call into the police department. The police were there in about 2.5 minutes, no more than 3 minutes. I saw the whole thing. But what happened was, the characters that were involved in this particular incident were aware that the cops were on their way because they carry scanners, pocket scanners. I just, if something could be done about that, because they took off. As soon as they heard that a cop was being dispatched at 408, 410 Lawson, they took off. Both vans were gone. Residents did their job. The cops did their job. They responded beautifully. Everything worked well, except the criminal element were aware as well that the cops were on their way. So if we can do something about that, I think we should, because they should have been caught. Is my point.
Mayor, yeah, I'd be happy to speak to the chief about that.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak to city council on city business? Please come forward, state their name and address. If not, Mr. Bill Miller.
I want to address one thing that Mr. Audit said about checking into the ambulance calls, because the fire chief's gone. But I did sit down, because I also had an incident where that took place, and it seemed like I was there for like about an hour. And I was a first responder for 25 years, so I understand a little bit about it. So after it was over, I went down and I sat down with the fire chief, and we went over some calls, and he assured me that he took the calls and he showed me the time frame, and my hour wait was about 8.5 minutes, I think it was. But when you're waiting for an ambulance and a fire truck and police cars, it seems like it's but we have checked with the fire department that he keeps the records of this stuff, when somebody's injured and stuff like that. And Fire Chief Capaldi was satisfied with the time frames where it was. And I also had a meeting with the D'Anibal family and talked about it, and some of that stuff was brought up, and they showed me some. Now, there's going to be a time when they're on a call or something like that. I mean, I'm not going to argue that point, but basically they're responding in the time frame, at least according to the people who are on those calls. So I just want you to be aware, we do check those things out once in a while. And that's all. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Bill Magna. I was going to add some more, but I think at a later date, because this subject will be coming up again. If there's no further business, we'll go ahead and move into an executive session, and I believe we'll meet in the police conference room.
Can you get your microphone? I know our consorts,